Julia Brzezzi, welcome to the Tick Boot Camp podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to finally have you on the podcast. And, I don't know why it's taken so long to get you onto the podcast, Julia. One of the things that we were talking with Mary Beth Pfeiffer about recently when we interviewed her
Mhm.
is all the places Lyme disease has taken us. And who would have ever imagined that we could have gone to all the places we've gone to? But when I was thinking about all the places Lyme disease has taken me, and all the places that Lyme disease has taken Mary Beth Pfeiffer, all of that pales in comparison to the various places that Julia has been because of Lyme disease, despite being only 22 years old. I want to go through the list. You've met the Pope.
Yes, I
You
have.
have you have been a star in a movie, actually the top Lyme disease movie in history. You were a fashion model in New York Fashion Week. You've been profiled in various articles, including what most considered to be the top Lyme disease article has ever been written by Mary Beth Pfeiffer, who we call the voice of Lyme disease. I mean, who else can say? Well, you're going to go to medical school, is my understanding, and talking with your very proud dad. I really love your dad. What a nice man.
Mhm.
Really, but I spent more time with your dad. So what else is there, Julia? 22 years old. I mean, Lyme disease sucks. I mean, it just sucks. But holy cow, it hasn't always sucked for you. Some cool things have happened to young Julia in her short 22 years on Earth.
Yeah. No, yeah, it definitely has brought me to many places. It brought me around the world, a lot of Lyme patients. I've traveled to different countries for treatments. And so there's been a lot of cool opportunities and opportunities I'm grateful for because it's helped me spread awareness about Lyme and hopefully bring some exposure to it, like this podcast, which is amazing. But it's brought me to places where I've had to be taken away from my family to receive treatment. And so unfortunately that there's that side of it as well, which I know a lot of patients experience. But yeah, I'm grateful for the people I've gotten to meet because of this and the community I've kind of been, I grew up in basically because I got Lyme disease when I was 11 years old. So, I've kind of grown up in this world. So it's been amazing to meet, different people who have um supported me and I've gotten to support them as well. So yeah.
Yeah, well, but so of all the experiences that you've had, and we're gonna build this out as we share your story. Of all the things you've done, starred in movies, walked and served as a fashion model in New York Fashion Week. Uh, met the Pope. You've been portrayed in leading articles. You've been an advocate all over the world. I mean, what is the one thing that's been coolest of all of those things?
Yeah. Um, I think the coolest was going to DC with the Quiet Epidemic team, and we were also with Christopher Maloney and Ali Hilfiger. And so we went to talk about the Quiet Epidemic with many different politicians, and I think it was like two or 3 days, if I remember right. This was last year, I want to say. And it was really, really amazing and eye-opening to see the impact these people in politics have. And we spoke with a lot of them, and many of them didn't even know what was going on. Didn't know the seriousness of Lyme disease and how there is a lack of funding and how there's millions of people suffering. A lot of these politicians didn't know. And so it was really cool to be able to like expose them to that and open their ears a little bit. And hopefully that made a difference. I know there's been a lot going on in DC recently with Lyme, which makes me really happy. But so that was a really cool experience. I'm glad I got to do that. Um, and then yeah, just being able to be in the Quiet Epidemic was great. When they first approached me for that, I was 12. It's just crazy. I was a kid. And
Oh, yeah, and you're all grown up
yeah,
now.
yeah. It's been so many years since then. Yeah. And so I was with my dad. We were getting treatment, and one of the filmmakers. Oh,
Matt is here, but we can keep going. He'll join
okay.
us.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Matt always late. Matt is certainly always late, but we'll keep going.
That's okay. Yeah, so I was getting treatment and I was with my dad. And one of the filmmakers also was getting treatment at the same clinic I was at. And they approached me and my dad and asked if I wanted to be part of the film. And I remember being so like hesitant because it just had happened to me. I was using the wheelchair. It was very new to me having a disability. I was kind of like in hiding a bit. I didn't want like my friends to know that. I didn't want my community to know. I was embarrassed, that suddenly this, devastating thing happened to me and now I'm, in a wheelchair because of it. And so I was very hesitant at first. Like we didn't say yes right away. And I took a few days to think about it with my dad and he didn't like pressure me or anything. He's like, it's up to you because, they're gonna be filming you. And we ultimately decided that, this terrible thing had happened to us. It exposed us to a world that not many people know about. There's so many people suffering in silence, including us. I remember at that time we were like fighting every single day with insurance companies. Treatment was getting denied. I didn't know like if I was going to be able to receive treatment. And, so we are like, how could we not like shine a light on this given the opportunity? And so we did it. We said yes. And I'm so happy I did. When the movie actually came out, it was years later, and I don't know, like 18 at the time. I think I was 18 when it came out, or it's been a few years now. So probably like, I was an adult when it came out, I think. And so it was very like shocking to like go back to that really, really dark time. They had filmed this for so long, and some of the like what I've seen wasn't even in the film too, like some really dark moments that they captured. Um, so it was a lot like looking back on it, and it brings you back to that time. And I'm so grateful to be where I am today. But it's a good reminder to see how far I've come, and I hope that helps a lot of people. Over the years, I've met a lot of people that like use it as a tool to explain to their family what they're going through, and that's I think like that makes it all worth it to me. So
Well, I certainly want to share my perspective on your starring in that movie. So we were contacted by Phyllis Bedford, who's a friend of ours,
mhm,
and she had let us know that the film was being developed and she was playing a role in producing the film.
yeah,
And she asked us to interact with the folks who were writing and directing the movie. And we did, and we ultimately interviewed the folks who were responsible for the movie.
mhm.
And then they shared with us a link to the movie before it was released.
Ooh,
Um, and I didn't know what to expect. A lot of the folks who were profiled in the movie we had interviewed, so we were aware of, and several of them, of course, had been authors whose books we had read.
mhm,
But we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know who the star of the show was going to be. And then this larger than life kid, you, become the face of Lyme disease in a way that I don't think anyone else ever has. So I have to tell you just like the way I was moved by the way you were portrayed and how brave you were in sharing your story in that movie made the movie. It really did make the movie. It was really your story. It was you. And but for you, despite all the attention that all those who were responsible for putting it together, but for you, that story and that movie would not be what it is. So I thank you for taking that risk. I thank you for, despite being a young kid, and being given the freedom to say yes or no, that you said yes, because
mhm.
that movie would not be what it is if it weren't for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I remember like the first time I ever watched it was in my living room with my family. Ugh, and it was just sobbing. Like it was sobbing the whole time from everybody in the room. It was so bad. And like because of that, I still like I because it was so emotional for me. Like I didn't even remember the movie because I was just like I was a wreck. And then the second time I watched it was in when it was premiered in Toronto. And I remember it was like in the theater with all these people, and I'm watching the movie, and I remember like my heart beating. I'm like, oh, I'm like kind of embarrassed, and this is like really like it's very vulnerable. I'm like the type of person I don't like a lot of attention. Like, I do all these things, but because I know it's for like a greater cause, and but like normally I'm like kind of introverted in some ways, and so the whole time watching the movie, I'm like nervous, and we had to do a Q&A after with the audience. And so, we went up, and the first person who got up, she like was handed the microphone, and she was just crying hysterically. And she's like, I just want to thank you because I've never felt more seen. Like exact things that I've been through on this journey were like depicted in this movie. And she's like, I just want to thank you. And I was like, like the relief I felt. I was like, oh, this is like, why did I ever hesitate? Why did I ever think this was going to be like embarrassing, or this is what people are going through? And I think like the film, it's not really anything to do with me. It's like how well the filmmakers put that movie together, where it wasn't just like, depressing and like, like a sob story. It was informative, and it really is, in my opinion, a tool that could be used to inform people. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate your humility, and I think the filmmakers did a great job filming it, and I think they did a great job of editing it. But
Mhm.
for you, it isn't a great movie. It isn't a great story, and all of the rest of what they pulled together really, quite frankly, didn't make sense. So I'll let you give everyone else credit, but I'm going to give you the credit for the movie because I think it was really you. And I will also share with you, I was really looking forward to Fashion Week, quite frankly.
Oh,
Not because I wanted to be a fashion model, not my thing. I
yeah.
wasn't looking forward to doing that. If it weren't for Lyme disease and a fundraiser, I would not have done it, quite frankly.
Right, me
But
too,
I,
honestly.
but I was looking forward, quite frankly, meeting you,
Oh.
because I really felt connected to you because of the story that you were told, and we want to, of course, invite you onto the podcast. So we figured we'd put some pressure on you. And I remember walking over to say hello to you,
Mhm.
and of course, I didn't intentionally wear a shirt that had Italia on it, but I was wearing
Oh,
a shirt, and
yeah.
your phone's like, "Hey, Paisan," and and we connected right away because of our cultural connection, and it just made it really easy to connect with you. But I just want you to know that part of the reason why I agreed to say yes is because I knew you were going to be there, and I wanted to meet you because you are really one of the most powerful figures in this community,
Wow.
and you're doing some of the best work that anyone is doing, and I just want you to know we feel that way about you here at Tick Boot Camp.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. And it was really great meeting you. I think my mom sat next to Matt's family in the
Yeah, his mom and his cousin. Yeah, yeah.
they got along so well, but it was really great seeing you guys there. And it was like, I was so like impressed with you guys for doing that. And like, because for me too, it was like, I would never model. Like I said, I'm kind of introverted in some ways. I don't like attention. So that was really out of my comfort zone. So, and I know that like a lot of people that were there, the same thing goes for them. So it was really inspiring to see so many different people from different realms of the community, like scientists, influencers in this arena. Like it was amazing to see everyone come together. It was really,
It really was cool. Fashion Week was really cool. And there were some people who were really into it. And there
yeah.
were some people who were like, oh man, I just my perspective on that was I just wanted to make sure I stayed upright. I didn't want to fall while I was walking down the stage, and then my children who were there would make fun of me.
Oh,
So my goal was to stay upright, and thankfully,
yeah.
thankfully I was able to do that. So Julia, let's walk it back. Let's talk about your journey and how it began. And I guess we should start when you were 11 years old. What happened when you were 11?
Yeah. So when I was 11 years old, um, it was kind of an explosion of symptoms. Well, I should say for like 2 years before that, I was suffering really, mysterious symptoms. I was always tired and I was very active. I was a sports player, I was a dancer, I was very active in my community. Like any club, I was a part of it. And so for 2 years, I was like suffering fatigue and muscle weakness and
So this is between 9 and 11. So this
yeah,
really starts earlier than 11.
yeah, like between 9 and 11 and hair loss and all these concerning symptoms. And I'd go to my pediatrician. I was like in her office once a month probably. And she'd say, no, no worries. It's puberty, it's growing pains, not to worry, virus. Um, and so when I was 11 years old, it really started. I was like at my desk at school and my legs went numb. And so, I was brought to the nurse. I was having blurry vision, weak, full body weakness. And so from that point on, it was about like a month to 2 months. I probably went to 4 different hospitals, saw over 100 doctors, specialists, you name it, spinal taps, any test you can think of, I had it. And throughout this time, it was getting worse and worse. It wasn't just my legs, but full body. I could not move. I was comatose, losing my hair, running high fevers every day. And throughout those hospitals, they weren't finding answers. There wasn't really anything in the blood work that was coming up. I think I was showing bands in my Lyme test, but not enough to be, CDC positive at the time. Um,
So Julia, let's talk about that for a second. So
yeah.
you're living in New York City at the time, right? You're living in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
the best borough in New York City. Most of us would argue. At least my mother, as a as a lifelong until she was married, resident of Brooklyn. So you're in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is really an urban community, right?
Yeah.
So how do you come in contact with Lyme disease living in New York City?
Well, we had a home upstate that we would frequent a lot where I is that what I where we think I got bit. Throughout those hospitals, we ended up figuring out that, in my medical records, I went to my pediatrician when I was 9 years old with a bullseye rash. Um,
Okay.
and she told me that, it's going to go away, but if it doesn't, go to a dermatologist. So she didn't prescribe me any meds. She didn't, bring up Lyme disease, I don't think, not that we remember. And by the time like the dermatologist appointment came, I think it was gone. So we didn't go. Um, so yeah, if she had probably treated me right then and there, I might not be here today.
Yeah,
Um,
it's likely you would not be here if you were
no,
treated
exactly.
at that stage. So let's focus on that. So were you folks upstate just before that? Were you tell me about your upstate experience? You had a house up there, or do you just have a connection to a community where your family would regularly vacation there? What was the upstate connection?
No, yeah, we were there a lot when I was younger. We'd go anytime there was like time off from school or for vacation. So that's where we think I got it. Um, so yeah, that's what we guessing. We don't remember like exactly the like getting the bite and like, seeing the tick and the bullseye rash, but we know I had it because I went to my pediatrician and my dad remember I was 9, so I don't really
Right.
have much
Yeah.
memory.
You're a little girl. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you wouldn't.
yeah,
So you're 9 years old, bullseye rash. Your parents are enlightened enough to bring you to a doctor.
right,
You go to a doctor in New York City. A New York City doctor is not likely, especially at that time,
right.
not likely to think Lyme when they would see a bullseye rash. And the
Yeah,
doctor thinks it's a skin disease of some sort. So what does a general practitioner do? Send you to a specialist, and of course, your parents don't think you need to go to the specialist anymore because the rash goes away. So that's
right.
the beginning of the journey. So now, between the ages of 9 and 11, you're now starting to have
Yeah.
these.
It was kind of festering, yeah. And I was slowly developing these symptoms until what I think it was like a neurological explosion when I was 11. I was probably like, developed neurological Lyme disease. And yeah, so even with that exposure that we had mentioned in the hospitals, they weren't, no one ever told us in mainstream medicine in those hospitals, she has the exposure, she has a clinical picture, the testing isn't reliable. Like, I think this could be Lyme disease. No one ever said that. So we were kind of like, everyone thought I was going to die. I looked like I was. I was running high fevers every day. I had real symptoms. Um, but again, I was called crazy. I was called a young girl that was attention seeking. Even though it was like the summertime, why would I, why would I want to miss my dance recital and miss my birthday and, miss all these beautiful things? And so that was really like, that was shocking to all of us that, existed out there. And, if it weren't for my father who had he left his job because he realized this was going to be a lot bigger than he initially thought. He was researching every day, all my symptoms, everything. And he's the one who he took me out of the hospital and he brought me right to a Lyme literate doctor. And that's when I got diagnosed.
When was the first time you saw a Lyme literate medical doctor?
Yeah. So I think all this happened in like May 2015, like, when I was
How
like,
old were you?
I was 11 at the time.
Okay, so let's say with that window, that 9 to 11 year old window. So what type of symptoms did you have? And was it the traditional symptomology where you have migrating symptoms,
Yes. Yes.
a knee problem today, an elbow problem tomorrow, a
Yeah.
fever the next day? Was that what was happening, the migrating
Yeah,
symptoms?
I was like picture perfect Lyme disease. I had the paralysis that was going on, but I had the weakness, I had the joint pain. I remember like I'd get so stiff that I'd scream out for somebody to like move me around because I was so weak at the time. But I had the migratory joint pain, the fatigue where I like could not stay awake, like everything, like the weakness. My hair was falling out in like clumps and which was like for me I have thick hair and a lot of hair, so for like my hair to be falling out was scary. I was pale white, like I was comatose at the time. This was like when it was really bad. um So yeah, I had like picture perfect Lyme. So it was crazy that no one in the hospital, like it was something they tested for, so they did have suspicion, but no one, I don't know if it was the lack of knowledge for the doctors to just not know about the testing. And um yeah, so that was it was crazy. So that happened in May 2015, and I think I saw my first Lyme literate July of 2015.
Okay, so but before we
So
get there, let's stay focused on. So you saw over 100 doctors in that 2 year window. Your
mhm,
dad quit his job and made first finding a diagnosis and ultimately seeking to get treatment for you his job. It became a full-time
right.
job for your dad, who,
Mhm.
as I said, is a wonderful man, really a cool guy. Your dad.
Yeah, he is.
So in this 2 year window, you had said that many doctors or people had called you crazy. Build that out for us. What were they saying about you,
Mhm.
and what was that doing to you emotionally?
Yeah. Um, well, at first no one was calling me crazy because I had those real symptoms. And when the tests started coming back, they thought I had meningitis at first. They gave me antibiotics for it. And then the testing for the meningitis came back negative and a spinal tap, so they stopped treatment. They kept searching, they couldn't find anything. So they were like, "Is it okay if we get a psych consult?" They asked me and my dad. And my dad, I was like I said, I was barely able to speak. So my dad was, he was making the decisions for me. I was also a kid. And he was like, of course, if there's an issue, we want to get to the bottom of it, even if it is a psych issue. And so I got the consult. I actually remember bits and pieces of my consult with the man. And I was cleared. He said there's nothing psychologically wrong with her. It has to be physical. Um, they brought that to the attending physician and she would not accept it. So she's like, we're going to have another one. So I think I had another psych consult, same thing, but she would not accept it. And so I don't I think this was the same hospital. She brought like an army of like residents with her to like tell my dad, no, there's something psychologically wrong. And my dad's like, we got two consults where she was cleared, and she's like, I don't care. And so we went to another hospital, and like because that was in my medical records, that's what they started with, like the tunnel vision was there now because the prior hospital had said that. That's like something they did. And again, we were always open to like exploring. We didn't know about Lyme. We didn't know anything at the time. So like we were willing to explore anything that was possible. Um, and so yeah, it was really because like even me, they started to like gaslight me into thinking, is this not real? Like, am I really going crazy and maybe I'm hallucinating this? And but like I knew that I wasn't, and I'm so grateful that I have a family that knew who I was and trusted me. And also I could not advocate for myself at the time because um I was so sick. And there is like a part in the movie where you hear me talking to a doctor, and like that's the only time I remember being able to like speak up for myself. So it was really hard. It was really isolating because within a few months I went from really active, very a dancer, the most active kid, to like being bedridden and not being believed by the very like people that are supposed to have your back and believe you and care for you. So it was a wake up call, and I remember thinking, wow, I was so sheltered because like I would have never thought that this happens to people, like, and that people don't have a family with them to advocate for them, and they go off to psych wards and they never get better, and it takes them forever to find answers because they don't have the support that I had. And I remember being so grateful for that, but also like feeling so alone and terrified. And it was a very dark time. And I know that like so many people go through that, which is so terrifying. Um, so yeah.
So the couple of paths I want to go with you on this piece. So the first is we had the blessing of interviewing Dr. Leo Shea several times on this podcast. Actually, one of our favorite people, in part because he's really good at making fun of Matt anytime we're on, he's on the podcast. Um, And one of the things that Dr. Shea had shared with us is anytime there's a psychological or psychiatric presentation, there is a physiological basis for that presentation. And that
Mhm.
was really enlightening to us the first time we had interviewed Dr. Shea,
Mhm.
because he really has taken the position that there's really no difference between a psychological or a physiological presentation. It's all the same. It's just a different presentation of a physiological problem. And all it's doing is giving us a clue to find what is the foundation of the illness or the disease presentation. Would you feel differently about the suggestion that your presentation was psychological or psychiatric if you understood what Dr. Shea taught us, which is it's really all the same, and it's just a matter of how an illness is presenting, and not that you're crazy, or you're making something up, but it really is just a different presentation of what the illness really is.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of like that explanation. I really don't know. I know that, it was definitely like Lyme disease, like exploding in my body.
Right, right,
Um, and but I mean that could make sense. I know that like a lot of Lyme disease patients are mentally affected. I've met many patients. At the time though, that's not what those doctors were saying, unfortunately.
right.
They just said I just made this up because I was bored. I was a little girl. At this age, girls like to make things up. They seek attention from their parents. Like, when they're going through puberty, the hormones, and like I was definitely probably stereotyped a little bit because I was my age and my presentation. And so that's like not what they were suggesting in the hospitals. They were just saying I was malingering, like point blank. There was some other like I don't want to say because I don't remember the exact names of such certain disorders like one doctor mentioned, but that was like, and there were doctors too in the hospital that didn't believe that. Like we saw many doctors, and there were doctors too that didn't agree with that. So it was like certain doctors that kind of like just threw that out there and like made everyone, like they made the care team, like a physical therapist dropped me in one hospital to see if I would save myself from falling. So they kind of got like everyone in on it. It was really terrifying. And now going through the pre-medical journey and preparing to go to medical school, I see how wrong that is. Like that is the opposite of how they teach you to be in medicine.
Yeah,
They teach you, even if you do think a patient has a psych disorder, you never treat them that way. That's medical neglect.
for sure,
You
for
know,
sure.
yeah.
So another one of the things I want to explore with you is when we interviewed Ali Hilfiger. First, I read her book several times, and then Matt and I interviewed her. And one of the things that I thought was really powerful about her story was it actually wasn't until she was institutionalized
Yeah.
in a psychiatric hospital that she was finally diagnosed. Right? It was an enlightened psychiatrist or I guess it was the second psychiatrist who had been assigned to work with her, who started to explore the underpinnings of the psychiatric presentation. And because that doctor started to explore the underpinnings of the psychiatric presentation, she ultimately met Dr. Phillips, who was the first doctor to diagnose her, and again went on her journey, working with many of the doctors, many of the same doctors you've worked with,
Mhm.
to go through her healing journey, right? So, when you are in a place where you understand that the psychiatric or psychological presentation is really just a symptom of a physiological illness, and
Right.
you're working backward toward that, then there's nothing wrong with somebody saying, "Hey, it's in your head," right? The
Mhm.
problem is that's really code for something else. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the code for something else, that it's all in your head. What are they really saying there about you and maybe about your parents when they're saying to you, "Hey, Julia, you're just making this up," but oh, hey, Dad, yeah, you're not working anymore because you're advocating for your daughter who's not really sick. I mean, really, what is that code for?
Mhm. Yeah, I actually really love something. I think it was Dr. Spector who said it in the Quiet Epidemic. He's like they're telling patients that it's all in their head. He's like, but it actually is in their head. The bacteria is in their brain, going rampant and creating these symptoms. So yeah, it is in their head. And I really love that because it kind of just throws it back at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's something we'd hear. Um, and they were trying to say, like it's not real. it's not something you're experiencing, and it was like a form of gaslighting, and you're making it up, and what you're feeling is not right, you know. And one thing too, you know, I hear now, it's so funny. I'm like on a different side of medicine now. I was a patient for so long, and it has been really eye-opening to be on the different side, and like how they teach, you know, our care providers. And like one of the biggest thing is validating how your patient feels, and active listening, and making sure they know that what they're feeling is real, and like even if what they think is real, it is real. So yeah, like to hear that it's in your head. I remember hearing that as like a little girl, and just, you know, like I was a little girl. I was, I think, mature for my age, but still, like for a kid to go, like I think now to my like little sister, she's older than I was at the time, but for my little sister to go through that, like, would be heartbreaking for me, because no kid should be exposed to that kind of language as well. It was like we were being criminalized and feel like made to feel like we were not in the right place. Um, so yeah, but I think, you know, it's code for, you know, you don't belong here. You're going crazy, and it's really sad. Yeah.
See, I'd argue, and I'm not a big fan of the term gaslighting. I do want to explore that with you. I spent a lot of time debating that with doctors at the ILADS conference a couple of months ago, where I interviewed 64 different doctors over the course of 3 days,
Oh,
and we had a lot of time to talk about gaslighting. I just hate the term. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it helps patients, and I quite frankly, I don't think it's really what's going on. So let me make the argument to you, and I'd like to get your reaction first as a patient, and now as a soon-to-be doctor. Um, the reason I don't like the term gaslighting is it's suggesting that doctors are intentionally trying to hurt you, that they know there's something wrong with you and they don't want to find what's wrong with you. And as a result of not wanting to find what's wrong with you, what they're saying to you is, hey, you're just making this up, right? I don't think that's ever what's happening. I think people go to medical school because they want to be healers, and they go to medical school because they want to help people. And they go to medical school and they're taught how to diagnose and ultimately treat people, and they're walking out with this prism. And the problem with the prism that comes along with traditional medical education is you're trained on how to treat people with acute illnesses. You're not trained on how to treat people with chronic illnesses. And because they have this very limited prism, and because they're trained the way they are trained, and it sounds like maybe it's changing based on what you're sharing with me that you're learning now, but I think they're trained to ride in on the white horse because patients want them to ride in on the white horse. Patients want to feel like they have someone who's going to be able to take care of their problems and going to be able to resolve their issues. And patients respond positively to that. And then we find ourselves in a position where there are some problems that are bigger than the training and the people who are trying to diagnose you. And when it's bigger than them, what happens, what I think the code is that I don't know, but
mhm.
I'm not allowed not to know. I'm
Right.
not allowed
Exactly.
culturally, socially, medically, professionally. I'm not allowed not to know. So because I don't know, what I have to do is say, well, maybe the dramatic 9, 10, 11 year old is making it up. Maybe her dad is suffering from mental illness and maybe, right, because they're not allowed to say I don't know. And
Right.
I think it's really code for I don't know, not I want to hurt you, or I don't want to help you, or I'm not willing to help you. Give me your thoughts on that.
So I agree with you and on that. I think that there was an extreme lack of knowledge. And I know just from like my brothers, one's a doctor and one's in medical school now. And both of
That's some family.
them, and yeah, and both of them, Lyme disease was one page in a textbook, and it was what there was only one day in medical school for a few hours where they went over Lyme disease. And for my brother Adam, I mean, for both of them, this was like really concerning to them. This was like, we do not learn anything about Lyme disease. He's like, so like who could blame these doctors because they're not getting taught? How would they know? Unless they have like a personal experience. Like my brothers know about it because of me and like, you know, what we've been through as a family. So yes, I think there is an extreme lack of knowledge, and that's the issue. And I think you know, in my experience with these doctors, we brought Lyme disease up to them in the hospitals. We're like, we think my dad, because he was doing the research and everything, we think she has this. And they just would not accept it for some reason. You know, there was research, we'd bring them research from their institution. like the hospital's institution, the like published articles about like the not like, and this was like 10 years ago. So like this was out at that time, I think. And they just would not look at it. They would not, they would refuse to look at it. And I remember there were residents who were like apologetic. I think we just got really, I think a hospital was not the right place for us because in a hospital, they want to get you in and out, especially like,
Acute.
yeah, I've had like jobs where I'm a medical assistant and I'm at a family medicine, internal medicine practice, and literally he just wants to get people in and out. Like he doesn't want to see complicated cases. He's at, towards the end of his career, he's not looking to like cure a mysterious illness. He's not.
No,
Um,
but Julia, and part of the reason why he doesn't want to take on complicated cases is because the insurance companies will not pay
right.
him
It won't.
for the cases,
Yeah.
and so he then has to work for free. And even
Exactly.
more importantly, let's talk about the last piece, which is again, I'll bring my profession in, which is how lawyers are hurting patients, right? How
Mhm.
lawyers are hurting patients is doctors who really want to help patients they always desired to do that. They always wanted to be healers. They went to medical school to heal people. They when they interface with people, they want to get better. But the problem is that we box them into something called generally accepted medical practices, right?
Mhm.
If they step outside of the generally accepted medical practices, which are those things they were taught in law school, the frameworks that, I'm sorry, in medical school, the frameworks they taught in medical school, if they step outside of that box, they're exposing themselves to lawsuits for medical malpractice, right? So what happens here is the insurance companies are only going to pay you for a certain limited channel of treatment, right? So
Yeah.
you're now not going to get paid.
Mhm.
And when you step out and you are treating the outliers, the people who are outside the bell-shaped curve, with something other than generally accepted medical practices, which by the way is what clinicians are trained to do, they have to now worry about whether or not they're going to be sued.
Right. That's right too. There's that they don't want to it to bite them, back in the butt. So I think that was like a big part of it. I think I got like a few I found the bad apples. And I'm not bashing doctors because I totally agree with you. It's really not their fault. It's the fact that there is a lack of education completely. I do think in my experience there were doctors though that could have taken the opportunity to see what we were presenting with them. Also, like my family is full of people in medicine. We weren't just like Google, like we weren't just using Google. We were
Yeah,
like
yeah.
going to reputable sources from their institution, and they just chose to ignore it. And I think that's probably due to the fact that they probably had 40 other patients they had to see a day, and their job is to get to a diagnosis no matter what, even if it is, they have to put blinders on, I think, at a certain point. They have to use push words to get to a diagnosis. Um, and that was the issue. I mean, I think we really saw what was wrong with medicine, not because it's like a personal attack on the character of the doctor. I think it's just what's wrong in medical education and our medical society today. And I think too, at that time, like I think we've come a long way as far as like people advocating for themselves in medicine. I think chronic illness is a lot more common nowadays, unfortunately. But back then, I feel like it was different. It was very different too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting. At least Matt and I often celebrate all the changes we've seen over the last 5 years that we've been doing this podcast. I mean, it really has gotten a lot better. And I want to bookmark that for a second and come back to it. But I want to say with this gaslighting piece for one more second because I think the term gaslighting, which is generally accepted in the Lyme disease community, is very unhealthy for Lyme patients to adopt. I think it's hurting your capacity to be successful in overcoming the challenges because I think we have to have relationships with doctors in order to be able to be successful in overcoming these challenges. And one of the things that you'll hear me rail about often during this podcast is this concept of, hey, you have to become your own doctor.
Yeah.
Right? Because what's happened is people feel that the medical community is intentionally trying to hurt them. And because they come to the conclusion that they're being gaslit and therefore people are intentionally trying to hurt them, what they do is they separate from the medical community and then decide that they're going to become their own doctor, despite not having the capacity to become your own doctor because you don't have the aptitude and the training to do that, right? So when we have this separation, and in some cases, people are connecting with each other, connecting with other sick people who are helping you to be diagnosed and come up with treatment options, rather than other properly trained and educated people who can help you, I think it's really dangerous. So one of the reasons why I'm now railing against the term gaslighting is because I think it puts people in a place emotionally where they're not going to be able to heal because it's going to trigger them into fight or flight and it's going to be immunosuppressive. But
Right.
even more importantly, what it's going to do is it's going to separate you from the community of people who can help you, and that is doctors. And if you don't have a doctor, you're not going to get better, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do we overcome that in part by me railing against the term gaslighting,
Mhm.
and others hopefully joining me. But even more importantly, what I'm going to argue to you, and I think you're the perfect person to have this conversation with because you were a long-term patient who was failed by the system, and you're now becoming a doctor, right? So
Mhm.
I think the conversation has to be more about the partnership, right? And we always talk about doctors being bad partners, but what we don't focus on is whether or not we're being bad partners as patients. What
Mhm.
can we do as patients that will allow us to have a better partnership with a doctor? And my argument is that if we are empathetic to them and their needs and
Mhm.
understanding what the limitations that doctors have, they have 15 minutes to spend with us. They're not going to get paid if they don't spend more than 15 minutes with us.
Mhm.
They are threatened with lawsuits and licensing actions if they're not relying on and generally accepted medical practices, and they don't have a test that says you have a particular disease, right?
Right.
Understand that's where they're coming from. Understand that's where they are. And now, how can we now become partners with those people so that they can serve us best while we're also serving them? Because a partnership, any healthy relationship is a relationship. It's interdependent. It's not the doctor serving me, it's me serving the doctor and the doctor serving me and having a healthy relationship. So let's talk about that, Julie. How can you be a better patient, not just by giving your doctor information, but also being understanding of what their limitations are and making sure that you understand that when you're now interacting with them and getting them to help you to be properly diagnosed and properly treated?
Mhm. Yeah, I that those are some really good points. And
Thank you.
yeah, I really like what you said actually, because I think I've noticed that too. I think there's a lot of anger in the Lyme community, which is completely warranted. I think people have been sick for so many years and they've been misdiagnosed and undiagnosed and have lost their jobs and family and their life. And they've wasted so much time because, there are doctors who didn't have enough knowledge. And I think that makes them angry, of course. That's like human instinct. We're going to be angry at the very system that has burned us so many times. So I completely understand, but I do think that if we're just angry, we're gonna just prove them right. You know what I mean? And
Or they're going to stay sick.
yeah, and you're gonna stay sick, and it is just I think a lack of knowledge. Of course, you have probably people in the background that we don't know about that maybe have conflicts of interests, and but I think when it comes to doctors and medical professionals, there is a lack of knowledge, and I think we've in our lives we've informed doctors, and now they treat Lyme. We like I know my brothers in medical school went to their professors and showed them the documentary and they screened the documentary and they had no clue. So there are doctors who just don't know. And it may be just because of like who the population of patients they're serving don't it's not common or for whatever reason they just don't know. And I think as patients, the best thing we can do is advocate for ourselves. Like we know we're not crazy. We know that there's unreliability. I think we can inform our doctors who might not know that. But to take, anger, it's normal, but I think we should find peace in knowing that we're not alone and that we're not going crazy and they're just misinformed.
But
Um,
Julia, isn't when we talk about advocacy, right? There's two different types of advocacy. I could be an aggressive, angry advocate,
right.
or I can be a polite, understanding advocate. I can be somebody who's demanding that somebody serve me
Mhm.
despite their frame of reference. And I want to talk to you about that in a second. Or we can be empathetic and understanding of the limitations that the medical system is placing on them, their education is placing on them, the system is placing on them, and to within the context of understanding that and appreciating that, helping them to help us. Give me your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
I agree. I think, like I'll give you an example. We have a doctor in Staten Island, and Staten Island right now is rampant with Lyme disease. And so we have a lot of patients. Like I just had somebody reach out to me yesterday who's like going, like, is experienced paralysis and he doesn't know what to do. But we have so many patients that reach out to us, and the patients that are like in this neighborhood will refer to this doctor who's in Staten Island. But we have a relationship with this doctor, and he always tells us, but I can't treat them, right? Because the insurance company will come after me. I'll get my license revoked. He's like, I'll do the testing, I'll get them the IGNX and the proper testing. He's like, but I can't treat them. So tell them that. And like, we have to understand that because, it's his living as well. Like, we want to live, but he has to live as well. You know what I mean? And so unfortunately, and I think that's like we shouldn't be getting angry at them. We should be getting angry at the system that puts these limitations, the insurance company that doesn't cover our treatment because we're not medically necessary. Um, I think that's the problem. And we're just getting maybe angered with the wrong people and not seeing it very clearly because of how we feel. But I think yes, we have to show empathy for the medical community. And I think for a while, like when this was first happening to me, I was probably one of those people who, you know, saw like the doctors who did this to me as villains. Um, but then I realized, and this is why I'm going into medicine now, it's just that. It's just a tremendous lack of knowledge, a lack of funding, because if we had these tests, if we had the right tests, this wouldn't be a thing, right? If we had the right treatments and, the right tests where it would come back positive right away and you can get treated right away, this wouldn't be an issue, I don't think. For patients that are now getting it, the patients who are already sick, that's a different story. But so, yeah, I mean, I agree that although it's warranted, we can't be angry at our doctors. We can do our best to inform them with the knowledge we have gained from this. But it's tricky. It's hard.
So I want to explore one more piece with you, which is frame of reference, right? Everybody has a frame of reference, right? And as a lawyer, I was trained to look at the world in a particular way, and I look at the world with that frame of reference. As a doctor, you're being trained to have a certain frame of reference, right? And the problem with frame of reference is it's like water, fish in water. We don't realize we have a frame of reference, right? And doctors are coming to patients with a particular frame of reference. We can argue about why they weren't educated about Lyme separately. Let's footnote that or bookmark that for another part of our conversation. But they are not trained. They have a frame of reference that they're working within, right? And then for us to get a good outcome from these medical professionals, because very few of us are going to be able to go to Lyme literate medical doctors, very few of us are going to be able to afford to go to them. So we have to make sure that the system works for us, for the overwhelming majority of us, right? So what I'd like to explore with you again as a student is the frame of reference that you're giving and trying to help as a patient help the doctor to understand that their frame of reference is incorrect and that they need to change the frame of reference and recognize that they have a frame of reference that is incorrect and that they have to look outside of that frame of reference to work with us so that we together can get to a place where we can diagnose and ultimately properly treat my disease. Give me your
Mhm.
thoughts on frame of reference.
I agree, yeah, because I think that, I mentioned like push words before, and I didn't really know about it. If I learned this from my brothers, but in medical school, they give you trigger words that if you hear this, it leads to a certain diagnosis. So if they have this, those are trigger words for this diagnosis.
Framework, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So that it's sometimes because of that, we're not looking at the big picture of like the patient. We're not dissecting everything because we heard these words. So now we have something in our mind already and like we put blinders on. And I think that's a big issue in medicine today. Because again, in these hospitals, in these private practices where only 15 minutes is covered, we want to get that patient in and out. Like, and I saw that firsthand where the doctor I was working for was seeing like 40 patients a day, like in like a short amount of time. Like was any and a lot of them would come to him with these like symptoms they didn't know. Like I remember there's so many people with joint pain, so many people, and like they're like, why is my knee swollen? Why is this? Why? And like because I'm in the position I am, I can't say too much and I can't step out, of like a certain boundary. And I don't, I'm not a doctor yet. But there were times where I'd be like, when I was like shadowing him and he'd have this patient who had like, it was this 30-year-old woman and she had like severe joint pain and she was weak and she was like, it was like a lot ringing Lyme disease, like, and she was from Staten Island. I was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, okay, but we tested her for Lyme negative. We tested her this negative. I'm like, okay, wait, doc. I'm like, the tests for Lyme are unreliable. Can we like test her again? And like, I knew testing her again really probably wouldn't do much, but I wanted to say it, to like, in a way that wasn't like attacking him or, he just didn't know. And I wanted to say where I wasn't like stepping out of my bounds, but, just like a question more like, and he's like, okay, let's test her again. I didn't like, let's do that. Let's investigate more into that. Next time when she comes back, we'll talk about it more. And I was like, okay, like these little things, because I don't have a lot of autonomy yet. Um, like, and just like connecting with patients about that and like, there is a mindset in medicine where it's just like get the patient in and out. I do think it's changing though a little bit. Doing a lot of med school interviews and like reading into like the medical school curriculums.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah. Um, there is more focus on like being empathetic and compassionate and looking at the big picture of like things and having a comprehensive mindset and being open-minded. Like language has changed, which is I think a good thing. But being like a
Because language creates mindset. Mindset
right,
creates reference, right?
right. Um, so I think people have caught on to the issue in medicine and are trying to change that. And there's so many like courses in medical school now where they're talking about like social determinants in health and like disparities and like the patient perspective. So I think like they're catching on to that. Um,
Well,
but
Julie, another piece I think we as patients want to bring to doctors is even the CDC indicates that a Lyme disease diagnosis is a clinical diagnosis, not a test, not a diagnosis based on a test, right? Now, of course, doctors love to have tests because they love to have paper to cover their butt. But at the end of the day, a clinician is supposed to be making this diagnosis without testing, without, again, there are frameworks that you use, and there are, I'll use your term, the trigger words that doctors are trained to use when determining whether or not somebody has Lyme disease, but it's a clinical diagnosis, right? So we have to help doctors to be brave enough to make a clinical diagnosis, even though the shitty tests don't allow you to have the support you'd like to have in order to be able to come to that diagnosis, right?
yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing because the doctors only have so much time. Like we're using the resources that are available to us that are quick, right? And we don't have a quick line test that'll come back positive or negative and give us a straight answer. So that's where what might be missing is like the doctor that would go the extra mile and like actually get to the root cause. That's the thing. No one is looking to get to the root cause and like really figure it out. We're just putting band-aids on things because we want to get people in and out. I think that's one of the biggest issues in medicine. But again, I've met wonderful doctors who do the opposite. I've shadowed wonderful doctors who do the opposite and like dig a little deeper, even with the short amount of time they're given with the patient. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things going from patient to this part. I see clearly the things that need to change. Um, and the problem is like a lot of doctors, I mean, not a lot, but there are doctors who haven't had the patient perspective, who haven't been thrown into a world like this where like medicine fails and there's gaps in medicine and there's patients that are like the consequences of that. Some doctors just haven't seen that. And that's the issue. But I think we're coming a long way. The fact that we're having like you guys have so many conversations with medical professionals and we have doctors like a lot in the Lyme world that are like coming out and being like don't accept that climate in medicine and are going the extra mile to like speak with patients and hear different perspectives and come on podcasts like this to share their perspectives. I think that's really great. That's what I want to be.
So to explore one more piece with this, clearly you can see I'm passionate about the doctor-patient relationship, but I want one more piece with you, soon to be Dr. Julia.
Oh,
And that is in defining the relationship between doctor and patient, one of the things that we've come up with here at Tick Boot Camp is this perspective about having a relationship, an interdependent relationship, one where you understand the limitations that the doctor has and trying to help the doctor change their frame of reference so they can see us differently and help us to get better, right? And the next piece of that is who is the boss in the relationship, right? And in our perspective, if you're going to have a healthy relationship with a medical professional, you're the boss. You're
Mhm.
the line boss. They are the person who's assisting you, and they are your employee, and they are there not to be revered and respected. And this is something I want to talk to you about as an Italian American, not to be revered and respected, but as somebody who is a project manager who is playing a role in you as the boss getting better and overcoming your challenges, right? Now, one of the difficulties we have with this in our society generally, and certainly in the Italian American community, is we revere doctors, right? I can tell you, my grandparents who were immigrants, their perspective was doctor, lawyer, loser, right? So you can go to medical school, you can go to law school, or you don't deserve respect, right? So there are certain professions and certain cultures generally, certainly our culture, mine, yours, the Matt's culture, but I think it's in our society generally where we give status to doctors and we give status to certain types of professionals, and as a result, we don't walk in as the boss. We walk in expecting them to be the boss and allowing them to interrupt us within 9 seconds of our first meeting with the doctor where we're providing the doctor the information. So I'm saying we need to have a healthy relationship. I'm saying we need to have an interdependent relationship. I'm saying we have to be empathetic, but at the same time, we are the boss. Give me your thoughts on that.
I agree. I think that like that could be another issue where we like see doctors as gods and not as people who can make mistakes. I think too we're like on a side of medicine that's not like black and white, that's not clear cut. There's like a lot of nuance to the side of medicine we're on, and I think we've learned like that having chronic illness and having Lyme, that doctors aren't gods, they make mistakes. And I think too a lot of Lyme patients realize it's like a lot of collaboration. I've like in the past, I've brought up things to my doctor that I've like researched on my own, and like so other patients try and like tell me about this, like what's your opinion on this, do you think this is like a worth a try, like what's your experience with it. And like sometimes he hasn't heard of it and sometimes he has. So I think it's like it is a partnership. I don't think like, and I saw this too, like working in the medical field, like a lot of patients come in nervous and like I'd be taking their vitals and like your blood pressure's a little high. What's like, are you like, do you take your medication? They're like, no, I just get nervous when I come to the doctor. That was like
Yeah.
such a common line I'd hear so many times a day. I'm like, this is not a place for you to be nervous. Like you should be the most comfortable ever because this is like your partner in your health. Like he's here to help.
Well,
Yeah. Right. But like that's how it should be.
no,
Anyway.
so if you're the boss, if you're the line boss,
Right.
you like that title, line boss? If you're the line boss, then the doctor should be nervous when they're coming in to see you because
Right.
you're the
Right.
boss, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not, of course, where we are because of so many cultural and social issues.
Right. And that's why you come across a lot of ego in the medical field. And that's an issue. But, there are some doctors who like realize that that's not the case. And like I know what I would be so nervous going in because I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power, using every shred of knowledge I have to find an answer for my patient, right? They shouldn't fear coming to me or be uncomfortable with me because I might not say something they like, or I might silence them, or they're gonna feel misunderstood. Um, so yeah, I think that like we have to advocate for our own health sometimes because of that miscommunication and like dynamic that is unfortunately common. But I think living in the world of Lyme and having chronic illness, like I know like for myself that like doctors aren't God. And I hope a lot of people realize that as well.
They're not gods and they're not looking to hurt you, right?
Right.
They're
They're just people.
people who
Yeah.
want to help you get better. And they come with a frame of reference and they come with a set of limitations, some of them illegal, some of them educational. They come with a set of limitations. And understanding that they have those limitations and working within those limitations allows you to have a healthy, interdependent relationship.
Yeah.
All right, Julia. So Matt has been quietly sitting here. Not that I feel sorry for him because he came
Rich,
here
you're
late,
killing me,
but
Rich.
he arrived late. So I'm enjoying my conversation with you and excluding Matt. But to be fair to Matt is going to take over and talk with you now about your diagnosis. Now that you're 11 years old, you get diagnosed, and you're finally seeing a Lyme literate doctor. Matt's going to now join us, Julia.
Hello,
Mhm.
Julia.
Uh,
So I'd
yeah.
be remiss. I have to tell you that my family absolutely fell in love with your family, and
Oh.
they've been asking me, my mother and my cousin, since we met you in September, on a regular basis, when are you interviewing Julia, and can you tell her that we want to have coffee with her and her family? So I'm just telling you that you're in Brooklyn, we're on Long Island. We need to make that happen because
Sure.
my family would be very upset, and I would as well, honestly, if we couldn't see you
Uh,
again and just catch up. So
you
that's
have
an
to
aside.
bring all the Italians together.
Yep, we all got to get back together.
Anytime. Yes.
So let's talk about this because we did obviously learn a lot about you from our research, plus the documentary, plus just getting to meet you. But I mean, you saw about 100 doctors at the time when you got really bad at around age 11, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So that's a lot of doctors. I mean, obviously you're motivated trying to get a diagnosis. How did you finally land on Lyme as being the root cause?
Well, it was my father. Like it was him because again, at the time I was very sick and I couldn't really do a lot of searching for myself. I was also like a kid and so he was researching every night my symptoms. Like he just typed my symptoms in. And also my eldest brother, James, had started medical school at that time. So he was researching as well. And so every time my dad would look up my symptoms, Lyme disease was like the first thing to come up because I really had all of like I had the migratory joint pain, I had the fatigue, like I had a very Lyme picture going on. Um, and every time he'd see it, he'd ignore it because the doctors in the hospital were telling him that it wasn't Lyme. Um, until finally one day he like clicked into it and he started reading up about Lyme disease, and he saw that tests are unreliable. Like this was a known thing. And so he would like once you start researching Lyme, like you're in a rabbit hole. Like, there's so many, people who have come out and talk about it. So he would like read up on this and he'd bring it to the doctors in the hospital and they would like ignore it. They'd be like, no, no, no. And so after doing more research, he's like, I'm just gonna bring her to a Lyme doctor and see what they have to say. Um, and like the first doctor we went to was actually a nurse practitioner. She's like, this is definitely Lyme. Just like on the clinical picture, this is definitely Lyme. But she's like, but look at her blood work. She has like these markers, and like this is Lyme. And she, of course, ordered more blood work, and I ended up testing positive eventually, like fully. But yeah, so he's the one who, kind of figured it out was Lyme.
Are you comfortable, Julia, sharing the name of the doctor, if you remember?
Yeah, it was Summer Del Senor. She's a nurse practitioner. She still practices. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we have another connection is with her as well. We're actually having her come in person for an in-person podcast in about a month. So it's funny that you
I love
said that.
She's
Yeah, she's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
She
So
she made me like, like she's the first doctor I saw who was ever like, I like was so inspired by her and I felt so validated by her and I she like saved my life. So forever grateful to her.
She's awesome. She really
yeah.
is.
I mean, I also think your dad saved your life too. I mean, I
Yeah.
think if it weren't for your dad, I just think
Yeah.
thank God for your dad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're having neurological issues, you're a young child, you can't advocate for yourself. They're
Yeah.
telling you that it's conversion disorder, but your dad kept fighting, coming to this conclusion, and kept persevering despite everybody telling you that it's all in your head, which is just absolutely wild. So you see Summer, you get diagnosed. At first, she's looking at your lab work from all your previous doctors. She
Mhm.
does some additional testing. You test positive for Lyme. Were you tested for any other co-infections as well at this time?
Yeah, I honestly though I don't remember. Um, I don't remember if it was like at that point. I have been tested since then, because I went to other doctors after her, but I don't know if she's the one who tested it for me. I don't remember at the time, but I have been tested for other co-infections, which I've tested positive for. So like babiosis and Bartonella, and oh my God, the one that starts with T, I'm forgetting it. Um, but yeah, so I've tested other positive for other co-infections, and I also had like autoimmune markers that they didn't like. I don't know if they didn't catch it in the hospital, but or they didn't tell us in the hospital, but I had some autoimmune markers that I was positive for as well, and yeah, so
Yeah, I really believe. I mean, the psychological community or the mental health community, and I think the autoimmune and rheumatologists specifically really need to be better aware of Lyme disease, because I think so many people in both those communities, because I and you and most of the Lyme community that are suffering with chronic Lyme exhibit inflammation, autoimmune, rheumatological issues, as well as mental health issues. And I think if we had better trained professionals in those areas, we'd get quicker diagnoses for all of us. And I think you just kind of brought that to light again. So that's something I think we need to continue to work on. But let's talk about now, you get the diagnosis, summer diagnoses you, you're about 11 years old. What is the treatment plan at that time?
She just put me on like a regimen of antibiotics and supplements and a diet actually that really helped me. It was like paleo, I think at the time. I cut out sugar and everything completely. And within a few weeks of treatment, I was like wiggling my toes. I was more awake. Like I saw immediate benefit from the treatment. But then I kind of like it was a plateau and then just up and down. Like a plateau where like I needed she had thought at the time, if I remember right, like I needed more IV antibiotics and like I needed IVIG, like I needed a lot more things that she had like that the practice that she was in like could not order for me. And that was the issue of why, we had to find another provider, but she really got like things starting for me, but I needed more at the time. Yeah.
Got it. Do you recall? Well, so I'm assuming it sounds like this is oral antibiotics. Do you know what type of oral antibiotic and what type of herbs and supplements you were taking?
I don't remember exactly the protocol. I know it was like the common Lyme antibiotics. I'm like pretty sure it was like doxy and rifampin. Like there was a combination of antibiotics. It wasn't just one. I don't remember the exact protocol because I've been on so many throughout the years. I wouldn't be able to remember, but
I mean, and you were 11 years old. Come on. I mean, you're 11, you're
I don't,
sick.
yeah. I don't remember much from that time. Honestly, a lot of what I'm like saying and a lot of my memory, I think too, is like from what other people have told me. Like
Yep.
hearing it from my father, I'm like, yeah, that I think that happened. That makes sense. But like I know it happened, but I don't remember details because it's hard to remember that I was a kid because I was going through like really serious things that a lot of people don't experience until later in life, when they have, elderly health problems and like blood pressure medication. Like I was dealing with this at such a young age and it's hard to remember that I was a kid, So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how long were you treating with her for before you had to pivot to another doctor because she couldn't offer you what she felt you needed in the form of IV antibiotics?
Yeah, I want to say a few months. And I was also, while I was seeing her, I was seeing a neurologist who was great. But she knew I had Lyme. She didn't touch the Lyme, and she had told us that I cannot touch the Lyme. Like it's looked down upon if I touch the Lyme. So I'm gonna just do the IVIG. That was the neurologist. She like knew a bit about Lyme, but she would not touch it. She wouldn't go near it. She like knew the controversy in the society, and she couldn't. She also worked like within a hospital, and it just like she made that very clear that like you could do the Lyme treatment with that doctor, but like I cannot touch it. Don't really tell me about it. Like, so I was with Summer and her for like a few months, and then I came to a plateau. Like with treatment, and she told us what she thought I needed, but she couldn't do it at the time. So this time we were like at a standstill and my IVIG wasn't getting covered. It was like a terrible time. It like really seemed like I was getting worse too because like I wasn't getting what I needed and then I met the Pope. And oh, I remember too, my dad was trying to get into these Lyme litter doctors, but like initial consults were $5,000. Everybody had a waiting list that was a year long. And my dad's like, no, she needs to go back to school. It was like September now. She's like dying again and getting worse and like we need help. He would literally like beg doctors like on the phone with the people in the office and like please just like we need 5 minutes, like anything. And it was a terrible time. Um and then
Did you get, oh, sorry, Julie, real quick, before we get to the Pope, did you get IVIG or you never got it because it
Oh, I
wasn't covered?
got it.
You
Yeah, I
did.
got it. The first time was in a hospital, but we weren't getting it covered. Like they stopped covering it. Like the insurance company was like playing games with us. For like 1 month it was covered, the next it wasn't. So every month we had to go to war. like on the phone every day because they wouldn't like, it was so weird. But and like, out of pocket for IVIG is like 20K
Oh
something,
yeah.
probably more at this point. So we're like, she can't get IVIG. It's not good to like stop it and then start it and then stop. Like you need it every month, that every certain amount of weeks you need it. So my dad was like panicking because it wasn't getting covered, and it was a very bad time, and school was starting again. And, like I wasn't able to go back. It wasn't well enough yet. Like I had gotten some progress, but not to the point where I was like functioning well. Um, so then the Pope happened in September, and we didn't realize like how much help that was going to bring. And I did not know going into that day that I was going to be on the news. Like I had no clue that was going to happen. We actually saw there was like a camera right next to me, but they were filming like the tarmac at the airport, and I was like ducking because like I didn't want to be on camera, and so I didn't know that was going to happen. And anyway, so a doctor saw me on the news and reached out, and so I was able to get the IV antibiotics and all that.
Well, you got to wait. You got to give us more detail about the Pope. I mean, I read it. I know a little bit more than everybody listening, probably because we did research. But what a cool experience! Tell us why you were there, how it happened, and what happened.
Yeah, so I like I said, I had stopped going to school, and I went to a Catholic school, elementary school, who are actually, the principal was a nun, and so she was call my dad frequently to like get updates on me and see how I was doing, and they would pray for me. And so she calls my dad one night, and my dad's updating her about like what we were going through, and this is probably like the darkest time. And also like we weren't very well into the Lyme. Lyme was very new to us at the time. Like we didn't know this world existed. Like we didn't know that
Yeah.
there was other people that experienced this. And so anyway, so he's updating the principal at my school, and she's like, well, I just wanted you to know that I think I'm gonna get Julia tickets to meet the Holy Father tomorrow, but it's not like guaranteed yet. And my dad was like so in like my he didn't like watch the news. He was so like bombarded with me and like invested in me that like he wasn't aware of what was going on. And so he thought she meant like the priest at my school. And so he comes upstairs and he's like, tells us, and we start screaming, crying. We're like, what's going on? Why are you guys so like excited? I'm like, she means the Pope. He's coming tomorrow to New York. And so she got the tickets, and it worked. It was like, so everything was working out so perfectly. Like she ended up getting 6 tickets instead of 2 because like somebody heard that she was getting the tickets and like gave her more for the whole family to go. And so anyway, so we went, and he was like 2 hours late. So they told us he wasn't gonna like come over to anybody. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I can just see him from afar. It's still worth it. And but he like stepped off the plane, went down the steps, and came like straight to me. It was crazy. And um it was a really beautiful moment, beautiful experience that still to this day, like things come out of it. And this whole like I was exposed to this whole Lyme community, and so many people reached out just from seeing me on the news, like that one interview. um like share like people from like not even the US, like around the world. I remember there was like people from Germany and like all these countries writing me letters and sending them to my school because they like I said my school, so they sent them to like mailed them to my school to like for
Wow.
um
I'm getting chills over here, Julia, right now. Getting chills.
yeah, through social media. I remember it was like the relief I felt just because like I knew like I wasn't alone. I'm like, okay, I'm not going crazy. Like I knew it. I'm like, all these people went through the same thing. And um it was like I was happy because I wasn't alone, but I was also like terrified that this existed. And like this was a world that other people were experiencing as well. And so many people, my community came together because at that time it was like we were very embarrassed what was happening. Also because we went so long without answers, and like we didn't want to tell anybody anything yet because we didn't know for sure what was happening. And so every like family members didn't know and like saw me on the news, and like community members that I knew of my whole life saw that I didn't know. And people came together through fundraisers for treatment. Like moms at my school like made a GoFundMe, and it was really like like I don't think I'll ever see an outpour of love like that again. It was a really beautiful moment of like humanity and like people coming together. And yeah, I'm forever grateful for that day.
And that's when you realize you weren't alone, right?
Yeah.
Now, but tell us, Julia, because I still want to know more. He
Yeah.
walks over to you, and then what? How do you end up in the news? Are you interviewed? Just, give us more specifics because we got to drop the link in the show notes, which we will, to all the information because there's a ton of news articles and stuff. But he walks over to you, the Pope.
Yeah.
What's that like? What's your interaction with the Pope? And then how do you end up on the news, sharing your story about Lyme disease? How did that all happen?
Yeah. Um, so he came over to me and like, he didn't say anything to me. Like my mom was saying to him in Spanish, she's I forgot what she said, but because he speaks Spanish, my mom does too. And so like she's sick, please give her a blessing. And he put his hand on my head, just like staring at me with his hand on my head, gave me a blessing. And I was crying, which I didn't think I was gonna do. Because I grew up Catholic and I would say I was religious and but at that time my faith was like really being tested. And even though I was excited about being there, I really just wasn't in a good place. And I felt hopeless. I felt miserable, like just in a bad place. And so I remember like looking at him and being like knowing it was like a sense of peace, knowing it was okay. Like he really like had such a way about him. Like you really could feel like, his holiness. And so it was beautiful. And he walked away, and then immediately, like a camera was in my face. Like I didn't even get a chance to say yes or no. Immediately, a tremendous camera was in my face. A man had a microphone in my, like at my mouth. He's like, forgot the questions. And he was like, "Why'd you come here today?" And I was like, I want a miracle." And then he was like, I was like, oh, I have a clinical diagnosis of Lyme disease because that's what I had at the time. I don't think I had tested positive really for anything. Like, I think I had bands, but I wasn't like positive. Um, and so I had a clinical diagnosis of Lyme disease, and that's what people heard. And they heard Lyme disease. And so that's why so many people reached out who had Lyme. Um, and like I didn't even, it's crazy that I said that. Like, I was like giving out really personal information on like national television. But like I wasn't thinking because I had just come off of a really emotional moment and I was just talking and crying and yeah. And again, I was literally 12 years old when that happened.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
So, because of this and because of the exposure it brought to you, all these doctors that your dad was fighting with to get you into, now all of a sudden they're answering the phone. And now all of a sudden they're saying, okay, I'll help, right? It took just a Pope getting involved for that to happen.
Yeah.
Now, which doctor did you selectively pick who is now willing to help you to go see next for IV antibiotics?
Yeah. So Dr. Stram, he reached out to us, or no, actually, somebody in the Lyme community reached out to us and said that Dr. Stram wants to see Julia. And I think it was like on a charity basis. And he's in Albany. And so we went to him, and the medication themselves still had to be like covered. So that was the issue. Getting medication covered by an insurance company. My dad like appealed many times. Like he has appeals like this big that he hand wrote like he's a lawyer. Like he had to learn how to write appeals to insurance companies. And so I was at Stram. We had to move upstate to the house that we have, me and my father, to receive treatment at his clinic in Albany. And I was there for I don't know, I forgot how long I treated with him, to be honest. I want to say a year. I treated with him for a year, yeah.
And this was IV antibiotics. Was there anything else or just straight up IVs?
It was IV antibiotics, supplements, like herbs, I think. Again, I don't remember exactly. I was also really struggling with POTS at the time. I still struggle today, but at the time I was like discovering because I started to get PT and we realized that when I would stand up, I felt like I had to pass out. And I also had I had mild Ehlers-Danlos. So we started to realize that POTS was a very big problem for me because I like really couldn't do much in PT because of it. So that was an issue that we discovered with him. I also was receiving I forgot the name of it, like a cranial therapy. He had like somebody in his office that was doing that, so he was doing that. Yeah, but with him, it was mostly like I had a pick line. I've had 4 PICC lines, 4 or 5 PICC lines throughout my life. Um, I was also still receiving IVIG. I did plasmapheresis during that, not with him, but with the neurologist I was still with at the time. So yeah.
So yeah, he's an integrative doctor, right? And he was doing a mix of Western and Eastern medicine. So let's talk about IVIG because you said earlier that even before Dr. Schramm that you were getting that from your neurologist, which I found interesting because generally IVIG is more for like immune, autoimmune problems. So why was your neurologist giving it to you, and was it helping prior to seeing Dr. Schramm?
Um, so I actually think it's common with neurology, IVIG, because it's autoimmune. Like I've had many neurologists. It's like something they offer. Also
Hmm.
plasmapheresis, but um, I don't think Dr. Schramm. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the last part of the question about?
Yeah, I guess that. So it's to me, I always thought IVIG. I never really thought about a neurologist prescribing it. I always thought it'd be more like a rheumatologist or just a Lyme specialist, not just a regular traditional neurologist. But I guess it makes sense the way you explained it that IVIG has a lot of overlap with neurological conditions related to autoimmune based conditions, and that's why neurologists will prescribe it. So I think that's you answered the first half, and the second half of the question was, did you find relief from any of your symptoms with IVIG prior to seeing Dr. Stram with your neurologist?
Yeah. I think IVIG did help. The problem is that like probably many other people, I did so many things at once because we just wanted any type of relief that we never thought to say, okay, let's try this first. See what it does. We just like throwing the kitchen sink at me. I was on antibiotics, I was on IVIG, it was on so many the herbs all at once. Like it's hard to say what helped. And I think also I had such slow progress over the years. Like you have symptoms and you're like, this is terrible. Like I feel terrible. But then you think back to like 2 years ago and you're like, I was a lot like for me, I was a lot worse. Like I had like it was like I think this is bad. That was really bad. So you don't realize progress until you like actually think back to how you were a few years ago, in my opinion. Um, so that's the thing. It was very slow progress. I never like received something and it like I was like had major improvement like within a few days. Like that never happened to me. I think IVIG did help. We realized that I was getting underdosed for a while, which was really bad. Really like it was unfortunate to hear that. Um, so then I had to get like the proper dose, and then we did subcutaneous as well, which I think was more beneficial for me. I don't know why, but I just think it was. But I stopped with that just because I was starting school and like I had a I felt like I was at a place where I could stop and like I wanted to focus on school and it's a big lifestyle change. You have to like inject yourself every I forgot now like a few times a week with it and so but I think it was beneficial to me. I do recommend like people with Lyme trying it. Like the thing with me is like I'll try anything, or I did at one point try anything I could get my hands on because the thing with Lyme is like there is no silver bullet yet, and it's a lot
Yeah.
of trial and error. And like what works for some people doesn't work for others. Yeah.
So I think two things I learned from you just now is that IVIG should be thought about carefully because you could be underdosed, like you were in your case, and you didn't realize at the time that you're being underdosed, so it wasn't being as effective
Yeah.
or effective at all potentially.
Yeah.
And then traditionally, IVIG is given through an IV into the vein, but you said that it worked better for you subcutaneously, which is essentially like a shot through the, in the skin, right? So you basically like it's a what I think of as a shot in the skin versus like an IV in the vein. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's like insulin needles and it's like patches that you put on your stomach and they're little needles and it's like instead of 3 days, it's like and like I don't remember now because it was a while ago, but it's like an hour where these are in your needles and it's slowly going into your stomach, like subcutaneous fat. Um, yeah, so it's like a different method of doing it. Yeah, so I mean, we think that that helps, but again, it's like very hard to tell. Also, receive stem cells. I did so many ozone, like I did so many things at the time. It's very hard to say what was the thing, or maybe it was the combination of everything. And um, Yeah.
And were the stem cells with Dr. Stram and Ozone, or were there other doctors part of your team during that year you were upstate?
No, I went to like different countries. I went to India, I went to Mexico, um, for stem cells. Yeah.
Uh, are you comfortable sharing a facility where you got stem cells?
So I think both of them are no longer open. Um, and I don't even remember the names because I was 15. Um, my dad would know off the top of
Okay.
his head, but yeah, none of like both of them. The problem was is that in India, I was there and I was supposed to go for 3 months. Um, and I had to leave when it was the 2 months because the clinic shut down. Yeah, so that was yeah. So no one could go there now. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's hard to determine what was helpful because you were doing so much at the same time between ozone and stem cells and IV antibiotics and IVIG. There's a lot of overlap or close timing between those protocols or treatments. So it's hard to tell which one was really having the impact, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were times where like I'd herx a lot on antibiotics. With Dr. Horowitz, I've done the dapsone protocols that he does. I think that has shown me benefit. Like when I know that I'm herxing a lot, in my opinion, that means like something is working. Um, so there were like times where I felt like I was herxing on antibiotics. I'm like, okay, this is like even though it's terrible to go through, it's like a good sign in my opinion. Um, but I think IVIG was good for me too, because like the neuropathy part of it as well. And like, I don't know. I'm glad I tried it. That's the thing with me is like, I'm glad I tried. If I didn't try it, I would just think about it and be like,
Yep.
what if I did that? And what if it was the thing that got me better? So I'm glad that I tried everything I could. Um, like, I've come a long way. So something had to do it.
Walk us through this. Just kind of give us the picture. Let's zoom out and say from the time you were 11 and things got really bad and you were having, all these kinds of symptoms. Describe those symptoms that you had at your worst when you were 11, and then which symptoms kind of fell off or improved as you were treating, starting with Summer and then Dr. Stram and then Horowitz and then these overseas doctors. Kind of walk us through the progression of that from a symptom standpoint.
Yeah. So I would say it's been like a roller coaster. I think as far as the Lyme goes, like I wasn't able to sleep at night. Like that was a big thing for me. I would like wake up like drenched in sweat. Like my babesia was really bad. That doesn't happen anymore, you know? So I was at a point where I was really bad. Like my adrenal functions were shot. My immune system was shot. I was sick all the time, but also because of the POTS, um, I was like running high fevers every day because my vitals were like tanking. I wasn't able to make like a day of school. I did all of high school basically online because when I would try to like go into the building and go through a day of high school, I'd like be brought to the emergency room because I was just like I would run high fevers, not be able to breathe. It was just like really terrible. Like the shortness of breath I'd experience. I'd literally go to the hospital with like a heart rate of 30 and have to be like supervised and um
What do you think
so
was triggering that? So, because from the time you were 11 to the time you were in high school, what do you think the triggers were going into the physical school versus doing homeschooling that made you get that much worse?
I think it wasn't even triggers. I think I was just so sick at the time. And like I should have probably been in bed, but I would fight tooth and nail with my dad that I wanted to go into school with my friends. You know, I had missed middle school completely. I was homeschooled. And I was like, I want to go to high school. And I was not well enough to be in a building. I don't think it was even triggers. It might have been triggers, like I might have been stressed, and that made it worse, of course. But I think I was just like not well. Like I was
Yeah.
severely weak. I was constantly struggling to breathe. My blood pressure was not regulated at all because I had the POTS and like we didn't realize yet that I needed medication for it. And so I was just not well and like I couldn't go through the day without like running a low grade fever or, like pain. My chronic pain was so bad that wasn't like controlled yet. And um so that was the problem. Like I wouldn't be able to get through a day of school to now being able to take an MCAT, and go into medical
Crazy.
school. So that's when you realize how far you've come. And I still struggle with symptoms. I do have a chronic pain. I do have the joint pain still, and I have the back pain, and I get the headaches and the migraines and the weakness and some fatigue. And but when I think about like because you have these symptoms, you think it's like the worst it can get. And, it's any type of pain, small or big, is miserable, right? Nobody wants to be in pain. But when I think about how bad it was, like I realize how far I've come. And the fact that I can like cognitively, I wasn't well either in high school. Like I like looking at a page was hard for me, and like for me to comprehend any information with brain fog and like my headaches, and I have vision issues, like everything was so much for me. Um yeah, so definitely changed, definitely have come a way.
Come a
Yeah.
long way. And
Yeah.
I asked because I look back when I was in school, we had somebody who was in our neighborhood growing up,
Mhm.
and she lived on the block over. And at the time, she wasn't able to go to school because she was so sensitive to the cleaning chemicals used
Yeah.
by the school district from elementary school to middle school to high school. And we thought it was so weird. But I
Yeah.
think, now fast forward to, today, there's so many sensitivities, whether it's chemical sensitivities to cleaning agents, whether it's potentially mold exposure at school that you're not aware of, whether it's just somebody's cologne or perfume that can trigger a massive migraine, which is, very common in the Lyme community. I was
Mhm.
more wondering, did you have any of those kind of triggers that could have been hitting you at school or even just in everyday life that were triggering POTS or other symptoms in your experience?
Definitely, probably. Um, Definitely, there was probably mold in that school that was maybe triggering things. I think stress too was like could have been a part of it, like that triggered symptoms for me. And like I'm trying to think of other like social situations too, like were probably like stressing me out and like starting that, but also like cognitively having to focus in class and like look at work exhausted me. And like then it created a headache. And then like sitting in my wheelchair all day what like created pain for me and like stiffness, and then my joint pain would flare up, and it was like so many things that was going on, and I was just like my immune system wasn't regulated, my blood pressure wasn't regulated, which causes other symptoms as well. And like so that was a problem. And but yeah, like that was probably at the time. Like now we know more, like the chemical sensitivity thing. Like that wasn't. I was nauseous all the time. That was probably a part of it. And um, so yeah, that was probably an aspect of it, definitely.
I think a good contrast to even add to your example of how you've progressed is, you know, you're 11, you can't leave the house, you're getting treatment. Middle school, you do from home. You try to go in high school and you can't even go to school because your body is just so unwell and you're so sick. But
Mhm.
yet, just this September, what are you, 22, 21? How old are you right now?
Yeah.
22. You're 22 years old. You hold it into Manhattan during Fashion Week, got up on the stage by yourself. And that's a high stress environment with, other advocates, researchers, celebrities, cameras everywhere. And you did it. And you went. So, I mean, do you think you could have done that back when you were in high school? It sounds like there's no way.
No.
So, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment when you really put that into perspective. Like,
It is.
that's never mind, it's scary, but it's a lot. It's taxing on the body, right? I mean, that's a huge physical thing, a huge stress thing.
Yeah.
And you did it. And that just shows how much you've healed and how far you've come.
Yeah, I've come a long way. I worked hard for it, I will say. I it was 10 years of no childhood, just constant medication, constantly trying something, like really going like, there was never a point where like I wasn't doing something for my health. And that started from 11 till like now. And there was a time where I'd like, okay, I need to take a break mentally because this is not good. Like there I still want to live my life. Like
Yeah.
I fought so hard to do it. Like I need to start living my life, and I'm starting to do that. I'm starting to like actually move towards things I've dreamed of doing. And so there was like a time where yes, I'm well enough. Like I still struggle with a lot of health issues. In college I needed certain accommodations and I needed to do some of it virtually. And so yeah, they're definitely like I'm not perfectly healthy. I would not say that. I still struggle, like definitely still struggle with things. And I still go through periods where there's massive flare-ups and I'm like, I might need to do something for this. But there was also a point where it's like, okay, I need a break because also it's not like good to do something when you're not mentally like in it as well. Like it's in my opinion, like I can't do a treatment if I like don't mentally can't do it. I don't think it's helpful because I think there's like a mind body connection. Um, and so I needed to take that break, but I did. I think I deserved it because it was like 10 years of nonstop to get where I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you said that you had to live life, which it's such a hard balance. And I think it's something all of us can appreciate as we start to get better. You want to live life, but you want to give back, but you don't want it to take over your life. And that's really hard because you have limited energy and a finite amount of, just mental and physical energy you can give just to all things in life. And one of the quotes you said that I have here that I wrote down that I loved is I have Lyme, I am not Lyme. And but yet despite that, you still obviously were in the Quiet Epidemic, the documentary. You're still, in Fashion Week, you hear in the podcast, Mary Beth Pfeiffer, who is one of the leading journalists, has, cited you in numerous articles. So you're giving back to this community in great ways, but yet you're not letting it be your identity and you're moving forward. So I think, you found the balance that we all need to work towards finding as we start to heal. So you're an inspiration for me in that regard, because I struggle with that greatly, Julia. So I might have to pick your brain offline about how you do that, because that's not easy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. There's also part of me that like I want to do more, for the Lyme community. Like I want to launch a foundation and I want to, there's so much I want to do. But then I had to like take a step back and be like, okay, because then you start to resent it a bit. And it becomes your life where you've had to live through hell. And now of course, you want to help other people with what you've learned. But I also realized like if I want to actually help people, like I need to focus on getting there, So that's why, college was a lot, taking these hard classes and like the pre-medical journey in general is very draining. It's very competitive. It's, and then dealing like I'm kind of embarking on new territory. Like none of my peers have physical disabilities like I do. I had to take on medical roles that, I don't see a lot of people like me in these roles. Not
Yeah.
just the patient with a chronic illness, but like, using a wheelchair, not, and there was also an aspect too, like, yes, being a patient with chronic illness, but being somebody with a disability in a world that's not very accessible yet. So that has been a journey too. But
But we need
what?
more people like you in those roles to help force
Actually,
change. We need people like you, and we're grateful for people like you.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and then you don't realize it too. Like I had an interview with somebody at a school, and he's like, I told him my story, and he's like, you really inspiring me because you don't realize it right now, but to be able to sit here in my office and like speak to you, I need to take like 100 pills a day because I have a chronic illness as well. And so, like, I was like, wow, you don't really, because Lyme is, Lyme is an invisible illness as well. Like, a lot of people
Yep.
struggle with this. The chronic illness is very common nowadays, and it's very unfortunate that it is. But, and Lyme is just one of them. But it's sad that it is an invisible illness, an invisible disability that a lot of people have to struggle with. Um, yeah, so navigating the world with it, and then also with that physical disability has been a journey in itself.
Yeah. So I want to ask, because I know when we spoke back in September, you were talking about Stony Brook University. So is that still something? And I should know this, but like, where are you? Are you going to be? Are you in Stony Brook? Are you going to Stony Brook? That's super local to us, and I have a lot of thoughts about that university. So I'm just curious where you're at with that. I know you have family members there too, but where are you currently in school right now? And I may have missed it earlier, and if I did, I'm sorry.
So I go to Long Island University in Brooklyn, not the one in Long
Not
Island.
Long Island, the Brooklyn one. Yep.
The campuses. And I'm a senior there.
Okay.
And so I'm one more semester. But I applied to medical school this summer. And I took my MCAT this summer. And so now this is like the time you hear back. And so I'll start medical school in August. And I don't know if I can like I'll tell you guys, but I don't know if I can like I don't know what the rules are about sharing it publicly for the school. I'm not sure. So
Yep.
I don't know if you guys could just take out the name, but I
Yeah.
recently,
Oh, we can talk about it offline.
Yeah. We can talk offline. Yeah. It's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
this part you can share that I recently found out that I got into medical school. And
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
yeah. So for a while there, I was very, I wasn't sure if it was going to be like going to happen for me because, I went on interviews. This is like the time you hear back, and I haven't been hearing back, but I've done interviews and So I had one interview with the school. It's Stony Brook, the school I got into, which is in Long Island. And the interview I had with Stony Brook, and the lady was reviewing my application. She's like, wow, an amazing application, so unique. She's like, but then I saw that you're in a wheelchair, and like I couldn't believe that you were able to do all these things in a wheelchair, like medical assistant, hospital volunteer, like bereavement counselor, like these things in a wheelchair. Like I can't ever imagine. And so, I'd explain like, yeah, a lot of these things were like an obstacle, very intimidating because it did feel like I was embarking on new territory. And like I remember the first time I went into like my like volunteering as a medical assistant, I went into the patient room and like the blood pressure cuff was high up on the wall. And like I was like, wait, I can't reach that. And so like these little things that you don't realize become like a little bit of an obstacle. But like I always found a way. Like I brought my own blood pressure cuff and I, take my patient vitals with that. And like so yeah, so for a second I was like, I don't know, maybe like I'll be a liability and but I did get accepted. So that's
That is amazing. That is amazing.
so
So
Congratulations.
and they haven't had she told me she's like from what I know we haven't had a student in a wheelchair. So she's like you'll be our first and so
you're all kinds of firsts. I mean, it's just your life and your career, and what you're going to do is the work you're going to continue to do for our community is just going to be amazing, and we can't wait to see where you're going to continue to go because you are brilliant. You are a fighter. You are strong. I mean, you're just breaking all of these rules. That I shouldn't say rules. You're breaking all of these, you know, barriers that I feel like are so difficult to cross, and it's just so inspiring to hear your story. And I do want to touch on, 'cause I know it's been a little bit, but you do have one of the things that's out there about you online is you have a medical malpractice lawsuit filed in New York City, March of 2021, against 12 doctors, a pediatric practice, 3 hospitals for failure to diagnose and treat Lyme disease despite clear evidence. And I think this is really powerful. So can you just give us a little bit of information, a little bit more about that? And, I really think that this case is going to be huge because so many people experience that, but you're bringing it to the next level to fight for all of us.
yeah. Um yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much I can say. I don't really know. It's a long process. We started this lawsuit years ago, and like I don't think we're near the end. So that's the thing. But like it's funny because like doctors, it's hard to find a lawyer that knows about Lyme, knows like all the nuance about Lyme, knows the controversy on Lyme, and is willing to take a risk and fight about it. That has the knowledge to fight about it, to go against these people that might not know about it or have like a notion about it. So we were really lucky and grateful to find our lawyer. And so yeah, been a process. It's been a lot of like having to rehash what I've been through, which could sometimes be painful when we're going into like very specific detail about what happened to me. And it has been painful, but I think it was important to like get justice. My dad always said like I don't really like whatever happens happens, but I want to know that like these people were reminded of you, like like because they've seen so many people over the years, they probably forgot about me. My dad,
Yep.
I want them to remember you, um, and so yeah, I mean it's I think there's a long way to go, but yeah, it's hard. I
Uh,
mean, it was like a hard decision, but I think it like for us it needed to happen. Um, and yeah, I know that it's not very common like in the Lyme world just because of the controversy and like finding somebody that would take a chance on you. So I'm very grateful that we found the right like team of people.
I'm really grateful to hear there's another good lawyer out there,
I
Matt.
know.
See, Matt, now you know how lucky you were, Matt, to have me.
I know,
Seriously.
right? Yeah.
Truth.
Like, it was a lot of going to different lawyers and like seeing if they take it or not. And a lot of them didn't. Um,
Yeah.
we even got like, I think we got dropped by our first one who like said he would take it and then did like backed out. And so, and then, there's like a statute of limitations, as you know, right? So,
Yeah.
so I don't know how it's going to end. I don't, nothing has come out of it yet so far. Like, but
And it's probably wise not to talk too much about it because we don't want this podcast
Right.
to have an impact on your
Yeah.
case. So,
Right.
Yeah.
and there are a very narrow channel of lawyers who practice in the medical malpractice arena. So it's hard to find a medical malpractice lawyer to begin with, and
Sure.
then one that has adequate expertise to take on a Lyme case, which is very, very rare. So you are blessed, and it's cool to see another one of the blessings that come to Julia. They seem to be coming from the Pope, walking down the tarmac and arriving right at
Yeah.
your wheelchair to all the other things that have happened. So Matt, why don't we tie up because Julia's been very really kind to spend 2 hours with us,
Wow.
and it's been an unbelievable, powerful conversation. But
Hmm.
we do have to be understanding of Julia's time and all of the effort she has to put into finishing school. So let's tie this up, Julia, with talking about purpose, right? Because one of the things that's really cool about this podcast, and quite frankly, one of the reasons why I've stayed with it for the last 5 years, is because we get to hear unbelievably beautiful stories. And what we hear from every one of our guests, despite the torture that comes along with this journey, is that they wouldn't give it back. That they've learned so much about themselves and their purpose and what God created them to do as a result of the pain and the suffering that they've had on this journey, that they wouldn't give it back. So tell us whether or not you feel the same way and how this has allowed someone who's only 22 years old to see her purpose in a way that she never would have been able to see her purpose had she not been on this very difficult 11-year journey.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I've thought about a lot recently, just because like I'm making a big life decision, going to medical school but I am really grateful for the side of medicine like even though it was painful, even though it was traumatic, I'm very grateful for it because it led me to my purpose. It led me to expose me to a different side of medicine that many don't see. It gave me clarity on what I think I could change and what I think I could do in my life, the people that I could help. It also introduced me to leading scientists, Lyme scientists and other ones that have inspired me that I want to do what they're doing. Like I want to bring answers to people. Um, so yeah, like my journey has been very long and it's been very hard and it's been painful, not just for me, but for my family. It, changed us forever, but I am grateful. It's hard to practice gratitude when there has been so much pain and loss, but I am grateful. I've come to a place where I can be grateful because like I know what I want to do with my life. I know the people I want to help. And actually in like the quiet epidemic, there Neil Spector has like an amazing line where he said he would always ask himself why me? And that is I connected with that so much because I remember like asking myself as a kid, why me? Why me? Why does this happen to me? And in the movie he says, but why not you? And I completely agree. That's like something I think about all the time. Like, why not me? Maybe this did happen for some mysterious reason. And, you know, like,
Well, is it really mysterious, Julia? I mean, is it mysterious or is it becoming clearer and clearer about why it happened, right?
yeah.
Because one way of looking at this is a whole bunch of coincidences just came together, and Julia is just this the product of a bunch of coincidences.
Mhm.
Or another way of looking at this is it just seems like Julia seems to be a really special person who's in special places with a special mission to help a special group of people, right? It's not
Yeah.
every day that the Pope walks off the tarmac and walks up to your wheelchair. It's not every day that you're the star of a movie. It's not every day you get to walk on or participate in as a fashion model in New York Fashion Week. It's not every day that that you're the focus of some of the leading articles on a particular topic. It's just not every day that it happens to anybody who's 90 years old, no less somebody who's 22 years old, right? There are a lot of different ways of looking at this, but I don't see this as a bunch of coincidences. And quite frankly, as a Christian, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe it all happens for a purpose. And yeah, you have suffered, and it's terrible. And you made my eyes well up repeatedly during the course of this story. As a father of daughters, it was painful for me to hear this. But I will have to tell you that you wouldn't be who you are, and you wouldn't have the capacity that you have if you didn't go through all the suffering that you went through, right? If all of the things that, if all of the lies that we accept during the course of our lives and all of the fake identities that we take on weren't stripped away from you at this stage, you wouldn't have a very clear understanding of who you are and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to reform the medical system.
Yeah.
But you do have a clear view on that now. And so do all the rest of us who spent the last 2 hours listening to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I hope I get to continue to make change, even if it's small ways. I think, you know, actually, like my story has created two doctors who are in the medical world right now who are going to approach a patient interaction with this knowledge, with empathy, with compassion, with knowing that like helping a patient is a partnership, that we're not God. And so that's something I'm really grateful for my brothers, that they, I'm very grateful for my family too, because I think God put them in my corner for a reason, like you said, and without them, I would not be here today. I think it's a lot about who your support system is and who's behind you. And I mean, this community too. I think we offer that to each other. So that's another thing that has come out of this journey, meeting people like you guys and meeting, so many like incredible people that are taking their experiences and really helping, using it to help others and create change and movements. And so it's really inspiring. Yeah, it's painful, but it's been so inspiring and so life-changing, and I'm grateful for it.
So I want to give you one more piece of advice. Let the old man give the young person one more piece of advice. And this is one of the things that I like to share with very smart young people like you who see so much need and want to do everything.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite quotes comes from Tom Bilyeu, who is one of the podcasters that I listen to. And he argues, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Right. And what I want you to do is I want you to be at peace with understanding that you need to narrow your focus and narrow the channel. Yes, you could open up a foundation. Yes, you could. I mean, we can come up with a list of all the different things that Julia can do. But right, what's going to constantly happen is your purpose is going to be revealed to you, even though there are many other things that you see that you might be able to help with. So let's be at peace
Mhm.
and accept that we have the ability to make the change within the parameters that God has created for us and just stay in that channel and do that, even though there are many other things that you can do, because time is going to be limited for all of us. And even though you've accomplished so much as a young person, your time is going to be limited. And I want you to be preying on where your focus should be, because you are created for a particular purpose. You are here at this time for a particular purpose. There are people who you are supposed to be serving. And once you discover that, the world is going to change for all of us, because that's what you were created to do. So remember, you can't do everything, even though you can do anything. And let's stay focused on that channel.
Thank you. I appreciate those words. Yeah, that is one of my things. I want to do so much, and you know, but I agree. It's like one thing at a time, and like knowing what you can do too. So yeah.
And knowing what you were created to do, right? Because really what this journey is discovering what we were created to do, preparing ourselves to do it, and then deploying ourselves in the service of the people that God created us to serve, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And you are blessed at 22 years old to have a very clear vision of the talents that God has given to you to serve people in the medical community and reform the whole process of chronic illness in a way that no one else could had they not gone on the journey that you've been on. So that is the blessing in this. That's a blessing of having met you. It's a blessing that not only did we receive as a result of watching you as the star of the movie and then meeting you in person at Fashion Week, but then having 2 hours to spend with you now. You're an absolute blessing to us and an absolute blessing to this community. And we really thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you guys. And thank you guys for what you do, because it's really, I know like this takes time and dedication to arrange and put together. And so thank you guys for doing this. It's amazing. And I think it really like is so important to have, like, I know you guys have a lot of doctors and scientists on. I love that like there is that conversation between patients and doctors and other people in the community. It's really important that we like communicate and come together and So thank you guys for doing that. It's really amazing.